Welcome to Eco Radio. I'm Bob Grove, your host. Tonight, we're going to talk about the state of our U.S. climate policy. We're joined on Zoom by Winston Apple, author and former member of the Democratic National Committee, Howie Hawkins, co-founder of the Green Party of the United States and presidential nominee in the 2020 presidential election, Wendell Chris King, retired Brigadier General, U.S. Army, and Dean Emeritus of the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College, Stephen Melton, Citizens Climate Lobby, Kansas City chapter leader, Karyn Strickler, founder and president of the Vote Climate U.S. Political Action Committee in Washington, D.C., and Jim Turner, board member of the Thomas Hart Benton Group of the Sierra Club and former chair of the Missouri Sierra Club. I think we could say that our previous administration was not particularly supportive of environmental or climate issues. The new administration has identified climate change as one of its leading issues and has already started working to change the direction of US climate policy. I'd like to just go around the room today, and if you could just take maybe 60 seconds or so and summarize where you think the US stands on climate issues today. And let's start with Winston.
Well, I feel like even before the election of 2016, we were behind, far behind where we needed to be. And we haven't made much progress, at least at the federal level, the last 4 years. I'm personally a little bit of a climate alarmist. I don't think we can move too fast to address this issue. And so I think the more that we can get done the next year or two, the better.
Thank you, Winston. Howie?
Yeah, I agree. We are in a real emergency. And what I've been advocating is we need to treat it like we did during World War II when the federal government took over a quarter of manufacturing capacity in order to turn industry on a dime into the arsenal of democracy to defeat the fascists. We got to do nothing less through the public sector on a rapid timeline to deal with this crisis. And I'm afraid that's not on the agenda of the Biden administration. They're more into, tax incentives and a policy here and a policy there. But a lot of leadership of the people we had under Clinton and Obama who are kind of marching in place, not advancing on climate policy.
Thanks, Howie. Chris?
I'm going to be the optimist then, since that it is definitely time to get to work. But what I see going on right now and very, very quickly is putting the elements together. We're getting the right people in place with a president appointing a presidential appointment for former Senator Karyn to be the climate director, appointing his climate advisor as a former head of the EPA. Just yesterday, they issued guidance in the strategic security guidance that is resplendent of how important for our national security meeting the climate change challenges are. So that helps focus all of the whole of government against those things as an economic, security, and national interest policy. So there are some good things going on very quickly, but I agree with the other two gentlemen. It's time to get to work right now.
Stephen?
Yes, yes. The risk of doing too little is far greater than the risk of doing too much. We need to do as much as we can do. And I really think that the Biden administration, especially in these first 2 years, is going to do the maximum it can with the votes it has in Congress. Clearly, and maybe this gets into Karyn, the more climate voters we can get and the stronger the majority for climate change action is in the next Congress, the more we can do. So we can build a solid base this first 2 years that we need to expand on in the next 2 years.
So Karyn, follow up on that.
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. Vote Climate US PAC's primary project is a national climate change voters guide where we rank all the presidential candidates and every incumbent and challenger for the US House and the US Senate. And we give them a climate calculation that every American can use in order to vote climate. And they're gonna have to start doing that and fast because our timeline is short. Now, I'm not sure exactly how much specifics you want us to get into, but our presidential voters guide rated presidential candidates in 2020 on 4 broad categories: position, climate plan, leadership, and a fee on carbon pollution. As far as Joe Biden goes, he received a 100 for position because he understands the importance of climate change as a top priority issue. He also received a 100 for leadership, which is certainly debatable and our most subjective category. But we thought his climate plan was a little lacking. We gave him a 75, which we're actually going to change to a 50. It was a miscalculation on our voters guide because he believes in the Green New Deal and he supports at least one form of carbon dioxide removal. But he doesn't believe in keeping fossil fuels in the ground because he believes in fracking. And he doesn't believe in 100% renewable energy by 2030. He also received only a 75 on our fee on carbon pollution because he supports a US fee on carbon, but he doesn't advocate for it. So he got from us an overall climate calculation of 87.5. And we're in a position on climate change right now where we need an A student on climate change, not a B student. And as I said, we're going to be making some changes to his score because we miscalculated his climate plan. So his actual overall score calculation, climate calculation is 81.25. It needs to come way up. And some of those specifics are things that we can talk about that he needs to do.
Thank you, Karyn. Jim, you want to talk?
I won't try to express Sierra Club's positions on these issues. The views I voice are my own. To meet Biden's goals, we're going to have to build each year the equivalent of 200 good-sized wind or solar farms. And that's a big job, but some of it can be done on federal lands. And there's building interest and support for this. Also, here in the Midwest, it's exciting to look at the potential change in agriculture, which creates 10% of the US carbon emissions. And there's great potential for soil sequestration there. It looks like there's plans for a new carbon bank that would pay farmers, foresters, and others to store carbon in their soils by using cover crops and other practices. And these carbon credits could then be sold to corporations that need to offset their emissions. This would be done using up to $30 billion of borrowing authority under the Commodity Credit Corporation. Trump used this to compensate farmers for the damage that his tariff wars caused. We should use it now for the climate. And the third thing I would mention is that methane is a bad substance. It's 25 times more powerful than carbon dioxide. And in last August, Trump canceled good regulations to cap methane. It's going to take months to restore good regulations for that. And in the meantime, we should ask Secretary Granholm to use her discretion to clamp down on the amount of exports of liquefied natural gas. So I look forward to more discussion.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Where are some of your other organizations at on the current administration's policy? Howie, where's the Green Party sitting on what's happening in climate policy?
Well, Biden has said he wants to spend $2 trillion for the next 5 years. My campaign did a Green New Deal budget to get to 100% clean energy by 2030 and zero to negative carbon emissions by 2030. Dealing not just with the power production sector, which tends to get all the emphasis, but also transportation, manufacturing, agriculture, and buildings. And our figure came out to 27.5 trillion to do all those investments, which we do mainly through the public sector. For example, you want to stop coke ovens from producing steel and go to electric arc furnaces. Steel companies aren't going to do that, even though they're moving in that direction, until they wear out the coke ovens. So we say you got to bring that into the public sector and make it happen in the time scale we need and with the coordination. For example, we have a housing crisis. We need more public housing. Those units can be built near where we build mass transit in cities and have more walkable communities that are more resource and energy efficient. But this requires, we believe, public ownership and planning to get the job done in the time frame we're talking about. So Biden's program is way short of what's needed. mean, Bernie Sanders came up with 16.3 billion over 10 years, and he wasn't as ambitious as us, but it was a serious program. Just to give one example of the few figures that came out of Biden administration, they want to build or retrofit, I think it's 5 million buildings in 4 years. Problem is there are 120 million buildings, and this is for energy efficiency. They don't even mention replacing gas with heat pumps. So at the rate they're going, it's going to take like 120 years to get through the building inventory of the country. That's way too slow. It's just not a serious program.
Thanks, Howie. I'm Bob Grove, and we're talking about the state of U.S. climate policy. We're going to return and discuss where the Biden administration is on policy and where we think we need to go from here.